The Evangelist is the leader of the White-Clad, and without a doubt one of the most enigmatic characters, not just in Fire Force, but in all of shonen. To put it into perspective, even though the Evangelist is technically the main antagonist, she only speaks once throughout the entire manga. In chapter 84, during Shou's memory, she says, "Child, you hold the Adola burst. Come with me and we will open the door." That's the only piece of dialogue we ever hear from her. But even with so few words, her presence is felt throughout the entire series. As for what the Evangelist truly is, we finally get an answer in chapter 287. When Shou explains it, the Evangelist is the physical manifestation of humanity's collective unconscious, the embodiment of humanity's hidden desires. And since humanity has an instinctive desire for its own destruction, the Evangelist works to bring about the world's end with the second cataclysm. And to make this happen, she controlled everything. She uncovered the truth behind spontaneous combustion, revealed the true purpose of the bugs, and taught the White-Clad about the Adola burst, the flame of destruction. She even went as far as kidnapping kids to test for it. That's how she got Haumea, the second pillar, and Shou, the third pillar. As for the scale of her powers, the Evangelist can do things like pass through tears in space, cause earthquakes that shake entire countries, or even blind anyone that looks at her, as if they were staring directly at the sun. Plus, those who share the Adola link can connect with the Evangelist and receive something called grace. When someone is under grace, they gain access to incredibly powerful pyrokinetic abilities that allow them to quite literally manipulate the laws of physics. I'm talking about 4th generation pyrokinesis. These abilities, however, are only borrowed, and the Evangelist can take them back whenever she chooses. Now, by the end of Fire Force, the Evangelist ceases to exist because Shinra reverses the world and makes death the god of this new reality. If you've heard about the manga Soul Eater by the same author, this is where the two stories connect. Soul Eater is a direct sequel that takes place in the world that Shinra created. In this new world, death inherits the power of creation, and with it completely erases the Evangelist's influence. The power of spontaneous human combustion is also removed from the world. Now, even though the Evangelist was technically the main antagonist, the one who actually plays that role is the second pillar. Number 2 is Haumea, the second pillar. And what's so crazy about her is that she's had constant exposure to the Adola link since birth. This gave her access to people's inner thoughts. We're talking about their darkest, most violent thoughts. Over time, all that mental noise took a toll on her, and she became incredibly cruel, sadistic, and deeply unstable. For example, whenever she summons demons or uses her more destructive abilities, it's clear that her mental and emotional strain takes its toll on her. Overall, Haumea's personality is a mix of childlike playfulness and pure sadism. She's detached from people, which makes sense considering she's been exposed to humanity's darkest side since birth. She also spends most of her life by the Evangelist's side. At just 5 years old, she helped abduct Kusakabe alongside Charon, all on the Evangelist's orders. And even though the Evangelist speaks only once in the manga, when she talks to baby Shou, Haumea is likely talking to her regularly off screen. Now, one of the few people Haumea seems to actually care about is Charon. He's been by her side since childhood. And while she can be cruel and she also makes sure to mock him, her feelings are sincere. In fact, when she opens her eyes for the first time, she actually sheds a tear for Charon, the warrior who gave his life for her. Moving on to her ability, it is neuroelectric control. She can send electric signals directly into the nervous system, which allows her to manipulate bodies, override speech, and even read thoughts. This is where techniques like radio head for mental communication and talking head to control someone's voice come into play. She can completely take over another person's actions if she gets the signal in. That includes people as strong as Kusakabe. Even though he's considered her equal in terms of power and status, she was able to manipulate and restrain him with ease. But her control isn't perfect. Her abilities can be disrupted by plasma, which is why Arthur becomes such a serious threat. His plasma sword scrambles her signals and makes it impossible for her to manipulate him or anyone nearby. As a pillar, her Adola Link lets her sense other pillars, transmit emotions across space, and even predict awakenings. She also has the rare ability to summon doppelganger demons, basically beings born from the fear and instability of others. This does nearly destroy her body, but she goes through with it anyway because she believes it is necessary. Now, by the end of the series, Haumea reaches a level of power where she is basically a godlike entity herself. You see, after both the 5th pillar and the 7th pillar willingly sacrifice themselves to her, Haumea inherits their abilities. She gains Inca's foresight, which allows her to perceive the future and makes her untouchable even when time is stopped. She also inherits Sumire's vibration-based abilities, which give her even greater control over her surroundings and deeper ties to Adola. Plus, with the deaths of the 1st and 8th pillars, she gains access to Iris's divine protection and becomes one with Amaterasu, the 1st pillar. Thanks to all of this, Haumea becomes able to unleash a massive beam of energy called the Light of Madness. We're talking about a blinding, destructive force tied directly to the despair and instability that fuel the Evangelist's world. At this point, Haumea becomes the living embodiment of everything the White-Clad has been working towards since the first Cataclysm. However, ultimately, after reality is reversed, thanks to Shinra Banshoman, Haumea and Charon are shown as a couple in the final chapter. Now that we've finished talking about Haumea, let's move on to the 3rd pillar. Number 3 is Sho Kusakabe, Shinra's younger brother and the 3rd pillar. He was taken as a baby by the White-Clad after awakening his Adola burst, raised under the Evangelist's influence, and told she was his only family. He had no idea that he had any family besides the Evangelist, and so with no memory of Shinra or the life he was stolen from, Sho grew up cold, quiet, and emotionally detached. By the time he was a teenager, he had become the commander of the Knights of the Ashen Flame. He was fully loyal to the Evangelist's plan and so aligned with his White-Clad identity that he didn't even believe Shinra was his brother. Of course, that detachment also made him dangerous. But when Shinra finally reaches him and forces a connection through the Adola Link, something breaks through. Sho starts to experience fragments of his true past and realizes he's been lied to. However, because he's too important, Haumea immediately places him into a deep, unconscious state using her own abilities to keep him from turning on them. But Sho eventually breaks free, uncovers the truth about his past, turns against the White-Clad, and sides with his brother. As for his power, Sho is absurd. He's a 4th generation pyrokinetic with an ability called Severed Universe. This power allows him to manipulate time by cooling the universe around him, essentially freezing everything except himself. It looks like teleportation, but in reality, he's moving while the world stands still. Of course, there's a trade-off. The extreme cold damages his physical body, which is why he can't use it for long. But even without Severed Universe, Sho has flawless swordsmanship. In his first fight with Shinra, he completely outclasses him. Overall, Sho starts as one of the Evangelist's strongest soldiers, but ultimately calls himself Shinra's guardian angel. It sounds corny, but it's strangely wholesome, though I can't say the same about the next one. Number 4 is Inca Kasugatani, the 5th pillar. Even before joining the White-Clad, she had a reputation in Tokyo as the fire thief. Basically, she'd always make it to the scene of the fire before the firefighters and then save people in exchange for whatever valuable stuff they had. This was thanks to the ability in the aftermath of the Great Fire, the ability to predict where the flames would spread. Of course, people saw her as a thief because she'd always take their valuable stuff after saving them, but some also saw her as a hero. But let me tell you that Inca wasn't doing this out of concern for the people. She simply enjoyed the thrill. Nietzsche once said, "Live dangerously." And I guess Inca really took that to heart because she thrives on the excitement of living on the edge. When she's revealed as the 5th pillar, everything clicks. She has both the Adola burst and a strong Adola link. Through that link, she can feel intense emotions from other Adola users and even predict when someone else is about to awaken. Her connection is that strong. Now, while she becomes a member of the White-Clad, it's also only for the love of the thrill. She wanted to live dangerously, which is why when Shinra tried to save her, she grinned maliciously. And that's also why when he told her he'd hunt her down as an enemy, she loved it. She's crazy though. After the world is reversed, she straight up asks Shinra for his seed because now she wants to have a baby with the hero who saved the world. Next, after chaos and unpredictability, we have the member whose calm dedication acts as an actual stabilizing force in the White-Clad. Number 5 is Charon, the guardian of the second pillar, Haumea. What makes Charon stand out is that his loyalty stems from his love for Haumea. He's been by her side since she was a child, and although they argue often, mostly because he talks too much and she doesn't want to hear it, his love for her is unconditional. He sees how much pain her powers cause her and views the Cataclysm as a way to free her from that hell. Though of course, Charon isn't just emotional support, he's also an absolute unit when it comes to fighting. He has the ability to absorb damage and turn it into energy, so if you punch him, he stores the force and sends it back as a massive explosion. The harder you hit, the harder he hits back. It kinda works like Vegeta's Ultra Ego transformation when you think about it. I mean, he absorbs the force from punches, blasts, and impacts, and turns it into heat that he can release whenever he chooses. This makes him really tough to fight because if you go all out against him, you're just fueling his next attack. However, like many abilities of this kind, Charon has a limit to how much he can absorb. It's rare, but sometimes he can overload. For example, during his fight against Nataku, he overloaded. He's still a pure unit who survived hits from even Benimaru, but he ultimately meets his end after absorbing too much from Hinawa's velocity rampage attacks. He wishes Haumea good luck and dies while she cries out. Next up, we have the member whose deadly and precise arrows makes all the difference. Number 6 is Zero, the guardian of the third pillar, Kusakabe, and the vice commander of the Knights of the Ashen Flame. Just like Charon, she is also extremely loyal to the one she serves as the Guardian. And naturally, within the White-Clad, this loyalty meant following orders without question, believing deeply in the Evangelist plan, and not letting emotions get in the way. However, she never got along well with Haumea and her childish nature. She did always put up with her nonsense, but only for the sake of their goal. As for her powers and abilities, Arrow, as her name suggests, is a master of archery. She turns her arm into a bow and fires flaming arrows that are fast, strong, and accurate. She can bend them mid-air, make them explode, and even shoot in the dark. Ultimately, after Sho decides to leave the White-Clad, she follows him because her true loyalty lies with him. She starts to open up and soften a bit, even doing a complete 180 in her perspective. She goes from believing that no human emotion has value in the face of the inevitable end, to thinking maybe the world doesn't need to end, and even believing in Shinra. Moving on, we've got someone who thinks she is Sungjin Woo. Number 7 is Ritsu, the fifth pillar's guardian. She's calm, serious, and always locked in, which makes sense because she's the one who watches Inca's back. And if guarding someone who constantly chases danger just for the love of the game wasn't enough, she also leads the Knights of the Purple Smoke, a faction inside the White-Clad, just like the Knights of the Ashen Flame. Ritsu really enjoys taking orders from Inca. She's so dedicated that when Charon offers help, she straight up snaps at him and tells him he's a bother. But taking orders doesn't mean she's the follower type. She can lead, plan, and take charge. The problem is, when things go off script, usually thanks to Haumea, she struggles to keep up. She likes control, and chaos throws her off. And yet, she is still Inca's guardian. That level of chaos cannot be healthy. Anyways, her view of life is cold. She doesn't see people as people. To her, they're tools, especially dead ones. And that brings us to her ability. You see, Ritsu can control ashes, especially from infernals and the dead. She brings them back like puppets, turns them into weapons, and can even make them explode on contact. She can also combine a living infernal with corpses to make giant infernals, basically massive infernals with multiple cores. Plus, the stronger the person used to build one, the harder it is to kill. She can summon a bunch of these giant infernals to completely turn the battlefield into a one-sided slaughter. The only real weakness is, if someone's trapped inside, they might still fight back from within. She's terrifying, but the one we have next is much more unhinged. Number 8 is Yona, and he's creepy. There's no better word for him. He's an immortal being from Adola, which is basically hell, and he's completely obsessed with the Evangelist's will. He'll stop at absolutely nothing to further her agenda. To put it into perspective, he's the one who's been subverting humanity's collective unconscious to make the Cataclysm inevitable. He is the true founder of the Holy Soul Temple. He posed as Raffles I, became the first emperor of Tokyo, and got people to worship the Evangelist as the sun god. All of it was a setup to control humanity and push the world toward the next cataclysm. He's the Aizen of Fire Force, and also the reason people turn on Shinra's family. Plus, his powers are just as disturbing as he is. He can heat up blood with his hands so much that it swells or even explodes inside someone. But what really makes him dangerous is his shapeshifting. He can change his appearance completely. Body, face, everything. It makes him nearly impossible to track or trust. He's also really paranoid and only acts when he knows things are in his favor. He often avoids real fights and comes off as both creepy and cowardly. Okay, now if Yona is unhinged, then the next one is ruthless. Number 9 is Assault, the perfect soldier. He also goes by other titles like Bloody Flame Bullet and the Assassin from the Abyss. Assault used to be a part of the Destroyers, a group of elite assassins tasked with eliminating anyone who opposed the White-Clad. However, it's worth noting that he never managed to impress the group's leader, Dragon. He left the Destroyers for unknown reasons and joined the Knights of the Ashen Flame. Despite that, his reputation and many titles are undeniable proof that he was always a brilliant assassin. The contrast between his skills and personality is amusing though. You'd never guess it, but the guy who can take out a demon Infernal without breaking a sweat completely shuts down if a girl's outfit catches him off guard. This becomes a problem when his opponent is our lovely Tamaki, but Assault trains non-stop. He reads naughty magazines, watches dirty videos, and even visits hostess clubs with scantily clad women to prepare his mind for the female body just so he can have a proper fight with Tamaki. His power, Crimson Bullet, is all about turning fire into missiles. They hit hard, explode on impact, and can wipe out enemies before they even get close. Plus, he's perceptive enough to block Arrow's explosive attacks with a single finger. Yeah, he's definitely ruthless, but is he more ruthless than the one who never acknowledged him? Number 10 is Dragon, the leader of the White-Clad's Destroyers. He's like the Kaido of Fire Force, from super strength, speed, fire breath, to skin tough enough to survive mountain-level blasts. He barely even needs air to survive. He fought in space without flinching, while Arthur was visibly struggling to breathe. And you see, what makes Dragon scary is exactly what makes Kaido so scary. It isn't just his power or durability, it's how empty he is. He was just a young boy in a rock when he earned the nickname Dragon. He was already empty and had no goals, so he simply walked the lands and destroyed whatever he wanted to numb his boredom. But exactly 50 years after the first cataclysm, he crossed paths with Faerie from the White-Clad, who promised him that in 200 years, they will end the world. This sounded like a worthy goal for Dragon to pursue, and so he decided to join the White-Clad. The Destroyers became a thing, and he led them for the sake of ultimately accomplishing the White-Clad's goal of ending the world. But much like Kaido, he wanted a good fight, a battle to the death that would make him feel and confront his own mortality. And so, just like how Kaido smiled after Luffy gave him what he wanted, Arthur Boyle did the same for Dragon. He managed to actually make Dragon bleed, which then showed us Dragon's personality in its rawest form. He enjoyed being hurt, but also wanted nothing more than to break Arthur's spirit. He wanted to show that hope or optimism were worthless in the face of overwhelming power. And it makes sense, right? He was the definition of overwhelming power after all. He could destroy massive objects such as Excalibur or even a portion of the moon's crust with a single blow. His strikes created shockwaves, and his speed is so impressive that he can move faster than the eye can see. He was literally able to travel from space to Earth in minutes. His durability is off the charts, and he can survive hits from the strongest fighters, like Benimaru and Arthur, without even flinching. He also has draconic pressure, which makes him unhurt by attacks while causing his opponents to suffer injuries simply by being near him. His endurance is just as remarkable, his stamina seems limitless, and he has that indomitable will that always gets brought up in power scaling forums. He's also lived for over 200 years without showing any signs of aging. He doesn't need food, water, or sleep. His pyrokinetic abilities let him breathe fire, which he controls in size and strength, and is capable of incinerating enemies with a single blast. Additionally, he can transform his body into a powerful armored form known as Dragon Coordinate. This increases his strength and durability even further, though he can still be injured by very powerful attacks. When you combine all of this, you get a near indestructible force capable of overwhelming almost any opponent. Man, Dragon would have definitely gotten along with Kaido. Somebody please write a crossover. Now in the end, when Arthur does finally defeat him, Dragon tells Arthur he's glad they met. Arthur smiles as Dragon fades away into space. Still, Dragon is definitely one of the characters who made the strongest impression in the manga. But how about the character who made no impression at all? Number 11 is Fracture, a member of the Destroyers. He must have been strong, but he wasn't even named in the manga. He only received a name on the anime's website. Yeah, there's really no point in talking more about him, so let's move on to some characters who actually had at least some relevance. Number 12 is Gold, another member of the Destroyers. She is the one who kills Soichiro Haig in his own office without any witnesses or signs of struggle whatsoever. Her ability is about heating up gold and controlling it through magnetic fields. This lets her manipulate metal, levitate it, shape it, and use it as a weapon. She can even stop bullets mid-air and fling them right back. She doesn't need to be flashy because she can turn anything around her into a weapon. She fights from a distance and hits hard before you even know where she is. Now, after Gold's control over metal, we have the one who can manipulate air and create whirlwinds to blast away his enemies. Number 13 is Shreem, yet another member of the Destroyers. He controls wind using flames, which sounds weird until you see it in action. Basically, his ability lets him bend air currents, which then allows him to create slicing gusts, vacuums, and pressure blasts. Yes, air is his weapon. He uses it to move quickly, knock enemies off balance, and cut through solid objects from a distance. During the Obi rescue mission, he shows exactly how hard it is to even get to him, let alone take him down. After Shreem, we have a few Knights of the Ashen Flame. Number 14 is Haran. He was already tough in close combat with his double-bladed knife and solid hand-to-hand skills, but his loyalty to the White-Clad was so hardcore that in chapter 47 he willingly transformed himself into an Infernal just to stop the Special Fire Force Company 8. And after his transformation, he not only held his own against Arthur and Shinra, he even managed to remain unaffected in the face of Benemaru's ignition ability. However, once Benemaru used Crimson Moon, he is killed very easily. Moving on, we have another hand-to-hand combat specialist. Number 15 is Flail. He was part of the Fire Force, Company 3 to be exact, but behind the scenes, he was already working with the White-Clad. He was a spy gathering intel and stirring up chaos. When it comes to his ability and fighting style, his weapon is a massive spiked flail made of fire and chains. He can control his size and movement with scary precision. This makes both him and his weapon unpredictable and brutal. Flail's real threat, though, is how well he hides his motives. Calm on the outside, but everything he did while in uniform was to push the White-Clad's plan forward. For example, when Akitaru spoke up and questioned the brigade's plan for dealing with the Infernals, Flail had to defend their reasoning to act as part of the team. But secretly, he was upset that Akitaru and Takahisa had disrupted the White-Clad's schemes. After Flail's unpredictable style, we have the one who uses heat to create illusions and confuse his opponents. Number 16 is Mirage, and as his name suggests, nothing shows he can be trusted. He used to be part of Company 3 before fully committing to the White-Clad. His power is all about deception. By heating the air just right, he bends light and creates illusions, clones, doubles, even fake outs. And it's not just one or two illusions either. He can make over 30 at once and keep them coming without breaking a sweat. On top of that, he uses fog to hide and split people up, which makes it almost impossible to track him. Overall, fighting Mirage means you're never sure who or what you're actually swinging at. His whole thing is confusing and wearing you down. After the Knights of the Ashen Flame, we have a few Knights of the Purple Smoke. Number 17 is Iron. Unlike Mirage, he doesn't do tricks, just pure raw strength. He's a tank, just straight up built like a wall. His flames are hot enough to burn through corpses completely, and his body is basically indestructible. Bullets bounce off of him. In fact, he literally compares bullets to mosquito bites. Yeah, he's called Iron for a reason. He sees his body as unbreakable. And on the battlefield, that's pretty much true. If Mirage is about misdirection, Iron is about dominance. He's also not subtle at all, but that's just because he doesn't need to be. Alright, after pure strength, we move on to disgusting agility. Number 18 is Orochi. Her ability is called Medusa Whip, and she uses it to control a fire whip. She can manipulate it at high speeds and change its shape, like turn the tip into something blunt or make multiple tails like a cat of nine tails for even more unpredictability. In battle, she uses the whip to both block attacks and to strike. She can spin the whip's tails to block bullets and other projectiles, and her strikes also carry a lot of force, which makes her a deadly close-range fighter as well. However, when fighting against other pyrokinetics with flame resistance, she needs to keep up constant pressure to break through her defenses. Orochi's ability to adapt her whip for both offense and defense makes her a dangerous and versatile fighter, but she doesn't leave a strong impression. The next character, however, makes an even worse impression. Number 19 is Sasori. Sasori's ignition ability lets him create a giant flaming scorpion tail, but to be fair, he was easily knocked out by Akataru during the joint investigation arc. That's all for the Knights of the Purple Smoke. Next, we have the X-Factor type of characters. Number 20 is Faerie, the one who recruited Dragon into the White-Clad. He is also the commander of the Great Cataclysm Execution Specialist Force that used to exist back in the early days. Their plan was to make sure that everything goes according to plan until the Second Cataclysm. He had absolute faith in the inevitability of the Second Cataclysm, especially because he spent over 2 centuries working towards it. And as for his powers, he can control gravity. Basically, he has a Dola Burst, and by using it to heat atoms, he increases their mass, which gives him the power to make himself or anything else float or fall with insane force. And the scale of his power cannot be exaggerated. At his peak, he literally pulls the moon out of orbit and throws it towards Earth. He can also distort space and time in order to counter time-based abilities. That's almost reality warping. Number 21 is Giovanni, the very definition of a twisted genius. At first, he was the leader of Company 3 and even felt like a loyal Fire Force captain, but as it turned out, he was working for the White-Clad. He was using his position to run experiments and push the Evangelist goals forward. And as for his experiments, we're talking weapons. He turns his own body into a machine with fire-powered arms, gadgets, and hidden weapons. But what really makes him scary is his consciousness transference. He sends bugs into people's brains, hijacks their bodies, and uses them as hosts. If the bug's alive, so is he. It's exactly how Kenjaku from Jujutsu Kaisen transfers his consciousness from one host to another. But while Kenjaku uses corpses, Giovanni hijacks bodies while the person is still alive, and by the time he leaves them, they are nothing but ruined minds and broken bodies. Giovanni's not loyal to anyone but the Evangelist, or maybe not even the Evangelist. His true loyalty lies in satisfying his mad mind by learning and understanding more and more about Adola. Moving on to another undercover agent, number 22 is Rekka Hoshimiya. Raised by Sister Sumire, he eventually becomes a lieutenant of Company 1, and even a priest at the Holy Soul Temple, all while secretly working as an operative for the White-Clad. The betrayal was definitely strong with this one. Not quite stronger than Goku though. He played the role of a priest while using the bug to find people with the Adola Burst. His loyalty to the White-Clad ran deep, and he always believed that he was doing the right thing. He genuinely thought the Evangelist path was true justice. When it comes to abilities, he is a 3rd-gen pyrokinetic who excels in close combat. His Starfist Punch launches flaming strikes that hit like cannon blasts. He's fast, strong, and skilled in martial arts. He was able to knock out Tamaki with a bear hug and was shown alone dodging a full barrage of missiles in training. Now, while Giovanni and Rekka were 100% always on the White-Clad side, the next one is a little tricky. Number 23 is Lisa, and she has had quite a complex arc throughout the entire story. She started out as a kind, loyal friend to Vulcan and Yu, even though she was already working with the White-Clad, but then it turns out that as someone raised and brainwashed by Giovanni, she was following orders out of fear more than belief. Even when she hurt people she cared about, it was clear that she was struggling with what she'd become. Her ability is called Flame Tentacles. They look like octopus arms and can be used to strike, grab, or block. They also have magnetic properties which let her track and lock onto targets, but her ability can be countered if someone figures out how to mess with the magnetic field. Ultimately, Lisa breaks free from Giovanni's control and begins to rebuild herself as a person. She's still fiery and blunt, but after the mental relief of freeing herself, the softer and more playful side that used to be an act becomes her authentic self. In fact, she gets even goofier. She also joins others in rescuing Obi as part of the gang during the Obi rescue arc. Finally, there's the former captain of Company 1. Yes, number 24 is Leonard Burns. He's amongst the strongest and most complex characters in Fire Force. You see, Burns was super devoted to prayer as a kid, way more than the other boys at the Holy Soul Temple. Because of this, he even got the name White Lion from Raffles III and promised to protect the Tokyo Empire. As he got older, he worked as a go-between for the public and secret sides of the temple. He also looked after a kid named 52, or should I say, Joker, and patiently answered his questions about faith and the world. However, one day, during an infernal outbreak, Burns and Joker fought together and had a strange experience. We're talking about the Adola Link. It messed up their eyes, showed them another reality, and even the Evangelist. When they came back, Burns killed the last Infernal, but started questioning if what they saw was real. He started digging into the temple's history and found some stuff that didn't quite match what the church teaches. Despite all of this, he kept praying. Burns believed in faith for its own sake and was so loyal to the church that he couldn't help himself. He always defended the church to maintain order. Eventually, he became the captain of Company 1 and was the one who lied to Shinra about what happened in his house. This loyalty is what made him leave Company 1 and join the White-Clad. When it comes to his abilities, Leonard Burns is an elite fire soldier. His ignition ability, Voltage Nova, allows him to burn infernal flames to boost his physical power, speed, and resilience. This means he grows stronger the longer he fights. As he levels up through different stages, his heat output and damage becomes extreme, to the point where even powerful enemies can't touch him. He can deflect attacks, create heat barriers, and land devastating blows that shatter concrete or create craters. Now, while those are the 24 known members, there's actually another White-Clad member who appeared as one of Yona's soldiers in chapter 167, but he was killed by Konro Sagamaya without ever showing any feats, abilities, or even getting a name. Yeah, he was a bum.